So before we officially kick off, I'd just like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands that we're all joining from today. I am joining from Gadigal land, so I'd like to pay my respects to the people of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to elders past and present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. I'll also like to acknowledge anyone who's joining us today who might have lived or living experience of mental ill health. Thank you for turning up today and every day and for the work that you do. So this is our first official episode, if you like, in our new Wellness by the Watercooler series by SuperFriend. Hey, there you go. This series is intended to be informal but informative, conversational in nature, and we'll be touching on a variety of topics that are, of course, of importance to our audience. So my name is Steph Thompson and I'm the Workplace Mental Health Advisor here at SuperFriend. I work with organisations to identify and interrogate the challenges going on in the workplace and support them in implementing evidence-based solutions to improve mental health outcomes. So SuperFriend exists to shift the dial on mental health, and we do this through our research and by enabling workplaces, arming them and you with the insights, tools, knowledge and skills to make work an environment that keeps people well. So as I mentioned, this is our first episode in our Wellness by the Watercooler series, where we'll be highlighting mainly our SuperFriend preferred providers, who are a suite of different providers working to improve mental health outcomes in the workplace. And today we're kicking off our first with Ryan McGrory from exsona. Hi, Ryan. So Ryan is the founder of exsona, a consultancy dedicated to reshaping workplace cultures with a mission to make work a happier experience. He collaborates with HR and people and culture leaders to elevate engagement, foster wellbeing and drive tangible results. His work in this field has received recognition nationally and internationally, and the strategies, platforms and programs he has designed have won 9 HRD awards for excellence in the areas of wellbeing, HR tech, reward and recognition and engagement. Ryan and the team at exsona's focus is to help improve culture and wellbeing at work with simple strategies that put smiles on faces and results on the board. And I couldn't think of someone better suited to have this conversation today about the why and how, quantifying the impact of employee wellbeing. So welcome, Ryan. Would you like to start today by telling us a little bit about exsona, aside from that wonderful intro and bio, and the work that you do?
Yes, I sure can. I was just thinking there, if this was a water cooler chat in real life, I'd probably be complaining to you about the night's sleep I had.
Oh, yeah.
My daughter was in the bed last night and she was using my back as a treadmill for most of her appearance in the bed. I'm not sure if I'm bruised on the outside or on the inside this morning, but that's what I'll be talking about
like
over
a
the water cooler chat. But no. It definitely wasn't. It was the pitter patter of tiny feet with incredible strength. It was really nice. Yeah, it was nice in a way. I can say that now. I'm laughing. Lots of coffee today. Lots of water by the cooler. But thanks for having us on. I've been really excited about this chat, and it was a great introduction about exsona and the work that we do. If I was to describe us, we're a bit of a boutique consultancy that we started. I started the business a few years ago, and we have a pretty ambitious purpose, which is to make workplaces and the people in them smilier, which you could say there's a definite need to do or to aim for. Started the business after working in HR for over 10 years, where I was at head of employee experience and internal comms and wellbeing at UWE, and in that role I achieved some pretty cool things. Built Australia's best health and wellbeing programme and won a few awards for that, and designed Australia's best reward and recognition programme, and developed the best HR technology and strategy in my time there, racking up a number of awards. But I think besides the awards, the coolest thing is really being able to actually positively impact people's lives. And that was my dream after a decade there, was to go and create more cool things and do cool stuff that benefit other people and other businesses. And really that's kind of been my belief in what we do at exsona is try to tackle workplace problems. I think there's 2.1 million businesses in Australia, and 17 million Australians work in workplaces. And I think we deserve to have better well-being at work. So we've created exsona to do that, to try and help improve culture and well-being with simple strategies, as you say, try to put smiles on faces and results on the board. And we partner with HR teams mostly and business leaders to support attraction, retention, and engagement strategies. And we do that in a variety of ways through mostly employee well-being, but also employee recognition, employee experience, engagement, leadership, psychosocial hazards, employer branding, EVP, employee comms, listening strategies, people strategies, people analytics, and data approaches. And we've got an amazing team that helps us do that. We got established kind of former HR people. We're not telling HR people to do stuff having never worked there. With decades of experience in HR, and so does the team and organizational psychology and executive positions as well. So that's a little bit. So that was a lot of it.
It was good. I love how simple you make. Sorry. I love how simple you make something that's so complex, saying to make workplaces smilier, simple strategies, like these all sound really, when you put it like that, it sounds like, first of all, it sounds like an awesome job, what you do. It sounds like a lot of fun. And in some ways it sounds certainly not easy, because I know, having working in this space, it's not easy. But sometimes this stuff isn't as complicated as perhaps it can feel. And I like how exsona and how you simplify these concepts. But today we're here to talk a bit about quantifying the impact of workplace wellbeing programs, because of course we want to make people smilier and make work, a better place to be and a place that protects people's wellbeing. But we also want to know that the initiatives and the strategies that we're doing are actually working, and that they're targeted to the right people who need them. Can you just help, first of all, just sort of defining what we mean by this? And by this, I mean workplace wellbeing programs. What is a workplace wellbeing program?
So a workplace wellbeing program, I think people use that term in different ways. It could be a specific initiative that's been used to address or tackle or improve upon a problem. So that's how I hear it being described. But I think more often it's about an entire program that kind of personifies a business's approach to their employees, that helps improve their well-being or supports their well-being journey, and usually has a variety of things. So I think interchangeably, I think sometimes employee well-being program is an employee well-being approach or employee well-being strategy, but it's usually the thing that, or the bunch of things that an employee experiences that's there to support their well-being. In terms of quantifying it, I think in simple terms, to define that, I'd say it's just simply showing what you do actually works. I think each workplace kind of gets to define impact in their own way. Essentially, I think it just relates to delivering on the goals of the wellbeing strategy program or overall approach. And the goals can be really simple. I think usually when a program is launched, the goals might just be to launch it, to get some adoption or to get people involved, or the goals might be participation based. So are people involved, and then maybe satisfaction based. Do people like what they're doing? And I think you could use those things to measure impact of based on the goals of the program. Or have you launched it? Are people participating, and are they happy? Or are they satisfied with what the offering is? I think from there it's maybe about progressing those goals, and the more sophisticated programs maybe look at awareness and education or skill building, and then try to measure the impact of those. So is the wellbeing program or the initiatives within the wellbeing program adding any value or showing any impact in terms of improving awareness, or improving literacy, or educating people, or improving capabilities or skill building? For me, true impact sits a little bit beyond that. So that's again kind of next level. It's measuring the outcome of all of the things that you're doing. So not just the aims of them or the goals, measuring what what is the outcome, what is the actual end impact. And for me, that's about health. That's about impact on people's health. Is the program or what you're doing within the program have a material impact on people's health or well-being, or the perception of well-being. And also, I think what gets missed is an impact on business results. So is the efforts towards employee well-being actually having an impact on business results? Is it showing a return on investment when it comes to measures such as absenteeism, measures like turnover, productivity, employee satisfaction, or anything else that's a great byproduct of people showing up to work and being at their best?
I think that was really helpful. Thank you for outlining that. I think certainly back when I first started working in this space, the measurements were all about participation numbers, satisfaction, and that is a really important sort of short-term, measure. But in terms of measuring health and outcomes and business results, and you mentioned return on investment, I would imagine there's a lot of people listening today and who will listen to this in the future who'll be really interested in that return on investment comment and how you measure that and how you link things like participation rates, satisfaction, how you can turn that sort of and other HR data into that return on investment. We know that the focus for a lot of organisations and sort of out in the narrative at the moment is around psychosocial risk, understandably and rightly so. Where do you think a wellbeing program or a wellbeing strategy sort of fits in relation to psychosocial risk?
It's a good question, and I think when I think about psychosocial hazards and psychosocial risk, it kind of reminds me of like these 5 stages that I think we've been through, like socially or in this country, in terms of how we respond to wellbeing challenges. And I think the first, might date back a few decades ago to the attitude being leave your problems at the door. I think that was a very first kind of attitude towards wellbeing. There's work, wellbeing's a home thing and works for work. And I think we moved into a different kind of stage where it was we better do something. And I think that's where a lot of counselling and EAP became quite popular. It was like, all right, well, this stuff isn't left at the door. We now need to respond to it. And then we kind of took a diversion, I think, from that trajectory, and then went into a phase of sugar hits when it came to well-being. So we were first responding with actual, evidence-based psychology practices, and then moved into sugar hits, which was all about fruit bowls and once a year well-being, and we'll have a mindfulness day once a year, and that's going to change everything, and or get a speaker in on a topic, and that's well-being ticked. And it's really just sugar hit. It was fly by the night, had no impact. And then it seems like in the last little while, so the last few years, we've seen a rise in wellness tech. We've just, instead of actually responding to challenges or finding out really what the challenges are, we've just deployed technology in our workplaces and thought, well, that's going to solve it. So I think we've done nothing, done something, that relied on sugar hits, deployed thoughtless solutions of kind of shelf life technology. And now I see psychosocial risk as kind of like a grown-up approach, you might say. It's kind of like mum and dad of the government in this case have come in and said, right, get your shit together, actually look at this properly. So to me, looking at psychosocial hazards and managing the risks are like an opportunity. I think we could go down this risk path where we just get so into a risk approach that we kind of forget about all the protective factors. So we just focus so much on the adverse factors that we're kind of blindsided. We don't support people's health because we're so hyper focused on reducing risk. I think it's an important opportunity because it should be part of an overall wellbeing approach to look at your psychosocial risks. So when I think about a wellbeing program, or I think about a wellbeing strategy or a wellbeing approach, or whatever we want to call it, I think the main facets of it are that we want to improve people's health. We want to, promote positive practices. We want to improve people's health or help them be healthier, essentially. And then the second part is usually about reducing exposure or eliminating hazards and risks. And then the third part, supporting people to recover if they are injured or ill. How do we get them healthier? So I think those are usually 3 components of a risk. So you might say, I think that a psychosocial hazard or psychosocial risk approach should part of an overall well-being approach. However, if you're looking at designing or redesigning a health and well-being program, if you're clever, if your organization's clever, then you're going to use insights from assessing psychosocial hazards to then design or redesign or formulate a plan for how you improve people's well-being. For example, if you do a psychosocial hazard assessment, if you were to look at doing that via any of the various surveys out there, or if you were to look at your psychosocial hazards via the Thriving Workplace Indicator, then you might uncover that there's a lack of support, or maybe a big issue or a concern is a lack of recognition in the organisation. I think if you clever use those insights, then design solutions that would then sit inside the wellbeing programme. You might ask yourself, is it through training that we're going to help? Is it through launching a recognition element to wellbeing, whereby we reward people for their efforts or contributions towards their own well-being? Or is it improving access to counselling, upskilling leaders on how they can support people better, have better conversations, or improve the access to support or awareness of it? So yeah, I think it could be that psychosocial risk as part of the overall wellbeing approach, or use the insights from a psychosocial hazard assessment or other survey to then design or redesign. So yeah, I think if it's done properly, then programs should be set up to tackle burnout, fatigue, leadership capability, employee support. Yeah, and that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but hopefully there's something in there that's
absolutely helpful. And I think also what I've realised is that we've got 30 minutes to talk about quite a complex topic. Like, all of these things are quite complex. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and go to the how. Because like I said, I think people listening are really going to be wondering, well, how? Okay, great. That we know it's important to measure. Most people wouldn't be here listening if they didn't realise that it was important. So now we need to talk about how. And I know that you've had experience, your time at UE and now with exsona as well, doing this. And yeah, like we mentioned in your intro, winning awards for doing so. And I want to make sure we have a couple of minutes at the end for any questions that people might have in the chat. So how do you measure the impact of wellbeing programs beyond just looking at those participation numbers and scores? And how can you make sure that what you're implementing is really making an impact? And I think if you can talk a little bit about that return on investment, again, I think that's what's going to really draw people's interest there as well.
Okay. All right. I think if you spend half an hour at the water cooler, people start to ask questions. So I'll fire on with this one and maybe and be a little bit succinct. But in my answer, I'm going to try and give away some practical tips on how any organisation can try and do this. So I think it seems one of those things that seem complex, but with a bit of effort, I think any organisation can do it. And there's a really, there's a little bit of a difference between showing your impact and not showing your impact. And if you want to do it well, then you need to do two things as a foundation. You need to do stuff. So you need to do things in the well-being space, and then you need to measure them. That sounds simple, but that's the foundation. If you have a strategy and you have goals, that's great. You can then look to do stuff that are aiming to impact your goals. And this is pretty important. So figuring out what it is that you want to move the dial on. When we designed the program at UV, so the one that won lots of awards, we wanted to show the impact of two things. Really, the return on investment the program was having. We wanted to show the impact it was having on people's health. We wanted to show the impact it was having on business measures. And we ran, lots of activities, initiatives, and training every single year. In the last few years, we're averaging over 300 events and activities per year. Wow. And they range from a variety of things. We did training on mental health awareness, webinars on, working on skill and capability building in the mental health space. Did fitness programs. It was like more things you'd see on a gym time table, flu shots, skin checks, massage. We had a barber on site. We had a beautician. We did language lessons. We did guitar lessons. We did crocheting, cupcake decorating. Basically anything that was there to try and have an impact on someone's well-being. And what we did is we measured participation at absolutely everything. So we knew what employees were participating, what they were doing, what employees weren't participating. We could look at things on a month-by-month or a week-by-week basis of the things that we were doing, who was and who wasn't participating. So there was a really, we did this with paper in the beginnings. It was paper and, people were writing their names down and putting that into a database, and then it was more sophisticated with QR codes as time went on. But really it was having that opportunity to look at the data, what we're doing, and who was participating. And from there, you can do some really simple correlations that give you an understanding of what impact that the program is having onto other business measures. So very simply, we'd put people into groups based on their data. So if they attended 0 things per month, or they attended something per month, they would be in 2 different data groups. Now you can get more involved. You can put people into a 0, a 1, and a 2+ column, or a 0, 1, a 2 to 5, 5 to 10 things, whatever period that you're looking at. And then we looked at each group's, or each bucket, or each group's experience with other business measures. So what was their average annualized turnover? What was their aggregate sick leave? What was their productivity scores? What was their employee satisfaction scores? Of course, all de-identified and done in an ethical manner. But from there, you get to look at the relationship that each group has with those other measures. So by participation, if you get clever, you can break things down and then have a look at, well, what in your program is having the most amount of impact? What is it that people are attending that shows that they have a more positive relationship with some of those business measures? And there you can get some indicative measures that show the return on investment, what well-being is having in relation to the business. And you can quantify your turnover scores. You can quantify the absenteeism rates in terms of a dollar value and that stuff. If you can do that, you can use some research that's already out there. At the time, I think it was 30 grand per person to replace an average Australian employee. You can do it in your own environment and cost up how much it costs to replace someone, and you can then get some good dollar measures to take to your executives, whoever, to show the return on investment that the program's having in terms of business results. The other things that we were doing as well was doing health assessments. So we're doing health assessments every single year. So a general population survey that went out to everyone in the organisation, and then showed with the trend data where we were moving over time in terms of the health of our organisation. And we showed through the kind of lifestyle factor surveys that were showing a reduction in risk of disease, musculoskeletal injury, and a variety of chronic health conditions. Over a course of 6 years, we saw a decrease in risk in all of those things, and also the high risk of disease related to physical inactivity, alcohol consumption, diet, or dietary habits, smoking, and sun exposure as well. So this helped us show the impact that what we were doing was having on the general population and on the business. And we could even get deeper from there, and I would run out of time to get into the intricacies of how we were doing some of that. But that was the goals of the program: show how it was benefiting the business, and we could do that, and we could do it in a dollar value. We can do it in stats and ratios, and also show how it was benefiting our population. Our goal was to, and my goal is now when I work with businesses, is the consequence of having a health and wellbeing strategy or program. Can you improve people's lives and help them live longer? And I think that stuff you can have a red hot goal at if you're intentional, if you have a good strategy and you set yourself up to measure. Because those measures help you course correct as well. If you've got some things in your program that are not working, you can get rid of them. You get things that are working and you're measuring the effectiveness of them, and you double down and you spend more money on them. Fun fact, we've learned that guitar lessons and language lessons were having the biggest impact out of everything. There's some environmental things there, of course, but that was quite interesting. Hopefully I've got some tips there on how you can do that from a practical sense, but that's how we managed to do it, and a lot of it was done just from not being sophisticated, just from measuring and doing some simple correlations.
I'm really mindful of time, Ryan, and I'll just quickly let everybody know that we'll be sending through an email with the recording and the survey, and include links to some tools and tips and ways that you can do this in your own organisation. I think from what I'm hearing, that you really looked at this from an individual lens, really looking at, okay, well, these individuals are coming to things or to, reading the articles or what have you, and then looking at that individual data around sick leave and as you say, turnover, employee satisfaction scores and all of that. Was it to be blunt, was it incredibly time consuming to do all of that? Or as you said, you started with a piece of paper and then you probably got to more, sophisticated using different tools. Were you doing this sort of every time quarterly, or what was the approach in terms of time investment to measure?
I'm a believer in do it well the first time and limit your time investment over time.
Mm-hmm.
So like in the beginning, it was a little bit time consuming. We're talking about, manual data entry into some systems. Simply now, even more so than ever before, you can develop some quick dashboards that can do this for you and have results go in there live. Like with Microsoft Forms, we were getting people to, when they attended an event, they would QR code just like you would, for ordering at a restaurant, saying what event you were at and who you were. Employee code went into a database, and the data was sitting there and could be used at any time. We did it live, so it was not a great investment. The more investment that we spent was on promoting the program and focusing a lot on having a marketing approach, making sure people knew what was going on and how they were getting there, and the recognition that we had off the back of it. So we incentivized people to turn up to things, not with expensive gifts, of course, but with some game mechanics and techniques.
Okay, and people don't mind a free morning tea.
That's right, exactly. Free morning tea, yeah.
I continue to be. I can't believe how quickly that 30 minutes has gone, Ryan. I'm just going to have a quick look in the chat and see if we've got any quick questions before we wrap things up. And if we don't get time to come to your questions, then we'll be able to put any of them into our follow-up email later this week as well. So Poppy.
I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes as well, and I'll
if anyone's able to stick around, that's great. And like I said, this is being recorded, so we'll be sending this around to answer questions then too. So Poppy's just asking how you took into consideration factors outside of wellbeing initiatives that could also influence attraction and retention. That's a really great question. I know at the moment we're seeing, a rise in mental distress, and the mental health outcomes in the population are not great. Yet there's been improvements in workplace mental health initiatives and changes in legislation and so on. So it is really, I'm interested in that question too, Poppy, around how you factor in, how you can make that link between what you're doing and the changes versus, other factors that would be contributing to it.
You can look to measure everything because there's a number of variables that contribute to people's, intention to stay, or their absenteeism, or their engagement or productivity. So we would look to measure everything in that example. But if you want to take an indicative measure, you look at measuring things over time. So we were looking at some the impact that learning was having on these things. We also looked at the impact that volunteering was having. So volunteering for charities, we record everything as well. We'd look at the impact that people's connection to the business's communications as well. And it was really about showing, well, if the people were doing things and they're doing things month on month, and again, this was over a 10-year period, and it was shown time and again that those who were more invested and more interested was having more of an impact. We also looked at the relationship month to month. So some deeper studies would look at, well, if someone started attending something, what would the data do? And then if they stopped attending, what would the data do? So we looked at like people who went from doing 2 things a month to 4 things a month, people who went from doing 5 things a month to nothing per month. We got really intricate into the data to try and understand those things deeply, and then try and understand all the variables that contribute to it. We did a lot of surveys as well outside of it. So we did employee experience surveys that went into some details across the life cycle, and some really cool automated features. I'm happy to talk for days on this subject. I love it. But yeah, the answer is we would look at some other things, but we're pretty confident after 10 years of studying it that we could show that well-being was probably more than indicative impact on those business metrics. But the whole organizational culture does, and everything the organization does can impact it.
I love your love of data. It's very clear.
I'm excited about it.
Claire, hi Claire. Claire has also asked a presumably about exsona. So how long would a business typically engage in your service offerings? So I'm assuming that means, how long do you typically work alongside a business? Is it, for example, 1 month, 1 week, 1 year, 10 years? Is there an average, or does it vary, depending on what the needs are?
Usually varies depending on what they need. So we try to work as fast as we can, of course. In about 12 to 16 weeks, we'll build a strategy from scratch, which includes the research piece, the building the data models, coming up with the whole calendar of activities and initiatives and how to measure success, and then all of 12 months of communications to support it. So that's like amazing value for the package, and that's probably the longest engagement that we'd do. Some others are probably on average about between 2 weeks and 6 weeks. I'd say on average would be average engagement. That's if we're there to help solve a problem or achieve a particular outcome.
Thank you.
All good.
That's all the questions we have, I believe. I think there's one more from Michael, who's just asking about, do you need to be a qualified psychologist to be actively involved in this industry? The short answer is no. It depends on what type of involvement you mean. Certainly, there is very much a need for the psychology training for certain components or parts of this industry, but overall, there's a variety. I think, Ryan, you mentioned you've got a HR background. My background is social work and HR as well. So yeah, there's all kinds of ways that people can be involved in this space, and depends on how you're involved. So, but thank you so much, Ryan, for your time today. And I mentioned to you before we started offline that my dog would probably start snoring just as we got started, and she is now snoring away. So that's probably a good time to end the session. It's been nice chatting by the water cooler. And as I said at the beginning, we'll be sending out this recording along with a survey for your feedback, so that we know how to make sure that these sessions are really helpful and informative for you watching. So thank you, and have a lovely day.
Likewise. Thank you. See you later.
Bye.